Okay, so again, my name is Sean Sloan. I'm a recruitment manager at St. John's University. And I'm really happy to be here to talk to you guys about studying in New York. So I'm just going to start with the New York City subway map because I think that's a lovely way to get oriented with New York City. New York City is made up of 5 boroughs, or in other words, 5 large areas. A borough is much bigger than a neighborhood. Um, I don't know how many of you who are participating have been to New York City before, but you see on the subway map, we have Manhattan, which is the center of New York City. And then above or to the north of Manhattan is the Bronx. To the east, we have Queens and Brooklyn, and south is Staten Island. And those are the 5 boroughs that make up New York City. St. John's University is located in Jamaica, Queens, which you see the large St. John's logo on the map. And we also have a small campus in Manhattan as well. We have campuses or locations in Rome, Paris, and Limerick in Europe as well. So we are out of the center of New York City. We're not, St. John's is not in Manhattan. We do have that small campus in Manhattan, but it's for our business students. This is the main St. John's campus in Queens, New York. Again, that is part of New York City. But it's a more residential neighborhood. I mean, it's not what you would be picturing of New York City. So to give you a sense of what it might be like, this beautiful 100-acre campus is actually in New York City. And I like to tell students that if they come to St. John's, they really get the best of both worlds when it comes to location. And just one last thing about St. John's specifically, we have a campus in Europe, in Rome, Italy, as I mentioned. We also have a small campus in Paris, France, but students have the opportunity to start at our Rome campus if they're interested. So you can start in Rome before moving on to New York. The point of today's webinar is to talk about why choose New York City as your destination of study. So when thinking about the right fit university for you, you might be considering these different topics, certainly majors, right? And rankings and cost, obviously. Other things like activities and size. But today we're talking about geography, and that is an important factor. So where do you want to study? Well, let's talk about why New York is a great option. So let's get to know New York City. It's home to over 8 million people, as I mentioned, spread out over 5 boroughs. It's just an incredibly dynamic city that is changing year by year. Every year that I go back, it feels new. But it's a beautiful city for so many reasons, you know, not just what you might think of first, like I think a lot of people, when they think of New York City, think of Wall Street and finance, which is wonderful. It's a city of opportunity, job growth, economic growth. That's all surely true. It's also obviously a city known for its arts. I mean, New York, beyond Broadway, you know, the center of theater in the United States, there's so much art. There's everything from small galleries off the beaten path to some of the world's most famous museums. And then there's performing arts, you know, every type of music, and it just goes on and on. So there's just so much opportunity to get involved in and to see the arts that you know, New York is just a wonderful place for that. I know food doesn't have much to do with studying and education, but it's important, right? We all care about our home culture of food, especially in Europe. You know, it's an extremely important thing. So when you're going to New York, you know that you can find your food from home. The food diversity in New York City is really incredible. Foods from all over the world at very, top levels, very close to being authentic from the home country. This is one of the things that I personally love most about New York City. And as I mentioned before, obviously the city of opportunity, the home of Wall Street, um, many of the top business firms are based in New York City, and there's just endless job opportunity. There's also opportunity for work study or internships during a study program. So it's a great place to study and start working at the same time. And I mentioned diversity in terms of food, but New York is really the home to the world. It is the melting pot of the world, with almost every country represented in its public school system student body population. And let me explain that for just 1 second. Sorry, 1 second. I can't be catching a cold. It's like 35 degrees outside. Okay, so what I mean when I say that is that about 10, 15 years ago, New York City was bidding on the Olympic Games. We wanted the Olympics to come to New York City. We didn't win, but we had this incredible part of our proposal. And I was involved in this actually at the time. I was working for the Department of City Planning. We were putting together this proposal. And one of the things that we were so proud of was that of all the countries that compete in the Olympic Games, we had all but 3 of them represented in our public school system in terms of our youth. Our students in New York City represent the world. So do the students at St. John's University, and surely at most, if not all, of the institutions in New York. You'll find people who speak your language, who share your religion, who don't share your religion or your language. But that's what makes New York City so strong, is the diversity. So that's my overview of just why New York City. Now we're going to talk a little bit about other institutions. Now, I'm not the expert on all these institutions, but I just think it's fair to mention, some of the names. This is not all of them, but these are a good 10 or 12 private institutions based in New York. The vast majority of these are based in New York City. There may be 1 or 2 that are slightly outside of the city. Columbia University is surely the highest ranked. NYU may have surpassed them even, or is not far behind. Those are the 2 highest ranked universities. Fordham is also quite high ranked and well respected. So are all of these institutions, including St. John's. So these are all well-known names, and I encourage you to just look into the different ones to see what subjects are offered, what scholarships are offered. I encourage you to look at each, website of institutions you might be interested in to understand the different scholarship options. We all know that the cost of U.S. education is quite expensive. There are so many opportunities to bring that cost down significantly, but sometimes it does take a little bit of research. So I encourage you to, contact me, contact people like me at other institutions and ask about different scholarship opportunities. Anyway, let's see, what else can I say about these? School of Visual Arts is what it sounds like. It's an art school. Many of these universities are liberal arts schools, so you can get just a wide variety of programs and majors to choose from. I see 1 student raising their hand, or sorry, 1 participant. If you'd like, go ahead and
Yes,
ask.
you guys don't have your microphones
Okay,
open.
right, because
There is a question and answer box where you can write your questions, and we'll get to them and answer any questions you may have. So feel free to write in that box as we go, and then at the end we'll answer all of the questions that you might have had.
Perfect. Thank you, Sarah. Okay, so again, just like a short list of some of the top private institutions in New York. But I also want to mention the public institutions. So there's a network of public institutions in New York City referred to as CUNY, or the pronunciation of the acronym CUNY, or the City University of New York. There are many of them. They're high quality, great education for less tuition, less money. So these are more affordable options in New York City, offering very quality education, and I encourage you to look into these as well. And then I'll talk just briefly about New York State, because New York is much bigger than just New York City. So I'll start that with a very similar network of schools called SUNY, right? The State Universities of New York, which is what it sounds like, very similar to CUNY. These are the public institutions of New York State, so ranging outside of the city. Here's a map listing all of them. The most competitive would be Binghamton, Albany, Buffalo. Those are the biggest and probably most competitive. The green ones are community colleges. Community colleges offer 2-year associate degrees, which can be used to then transfer to a full 4-year university. So you can do 2 years at a community college and then transfer and finish a bachelor's degree in only 2 more years, totaling the same 4 years you would do, if you just did the whole bachelor somewhere else. Cornell also is a wonderful university. Not 100% sure about this. Sarah might know better than me, actually. I believe Cornell has sort of a private and a public side. I'm just not 100% sure, but that is an extremely competitive, highly ranked institution with at least some public component to it. So while this website is not really sponsoring this webinar or doing anything for our behalf, that it's helpful, and so I just put it in here to mention it as a way for you to start doing some research if you are interested in New York, and you want to find good fit institutions for you. Take a look. The New York Times also recently released a new ranking system that is the best one to come out yet, in my opinion. So if you have access to the New York Times, it does take a subscription fee, but they have this Create Your Own Rankings app where you can put in what's important to you, and then they literally rank all the universities in the United States based on your needs or your interests. It's sort of like all these other websites that offer the sort of find the best fit for you, except it's more professional in my opinion, because they literally rank the best fits for you. And it's just really well done. So anyway, take a look at the New York Times if you can. Take a look at this website. But then I encourage you really to just look specifically at each institution's website and send emails or contact the admission counselors. So with that, and these beautiful photos that my student workers put together, we're waiting for you in New York. It is truly a beautiful city and beautiful place to live and study. I'm going to just talk very briefly a little bit more about St. John's University, which is the institution that I work for. And then we'll go to questions at the end. Okay, so for the students, if you're raising your hand in the chat, please type your question into the Q&A. I just saw another student raise their hand now. As Sarah was saying before, if you weren't logged in earlier, students or participants don't have access to the microphone, but you can type in the Q&A section, and we'll get to that at the end. So St. John's University is a large institution with about 17,000 undergraduate students currently enrolled. We have students from over 120 countries represented. So really students from all over the world. Our student to faculty ratio is 17:1, which means for every 17 students, there is one professor. This leads to small class sizes. So despite the fact that we are a large institution, our average class size is between 20 and 25 students. So we do not hold those huge lecture hall courses that you might picture at a big American institution, which is a big plus, in my opinion. You get a lot of close attention from your professors. We're also a big sports school. Spanish students, international students who attend university in the US are, I don't know how to put this exactly, you're great athletes. Some astonishing percentage of Spanish students who go on to university in the US do receive some sort of sports scholarship. So if that's something that you're thinking about or you're interested in, please contact me. We're always looking for top athletes. So St. John's is a Division I sports institution. We have 17 Division I teams, so that is the highest level of NCAA play, sport in the States, Division I. And what else? We aside from that, we have sport at every level. We have over 180 clubs on campus, student organizations, but we also have sports, for those who do sport more as a hobby. I mean, we have intramural teams and club sport teams. We have a huge alumni network. St. John's has been around for over 150 years. And we're based in New York City. We have alumni groups or chapters all around the world. We have a good big one in London. And this really just leads to career opportunity. So, a strong alumni network based in New York City around the world is a good way to network and get jobs after university. We say we major in options. In other words, we just have so many programs to pick from that the easiest thing for me to say is we do not offer engineering or architecture, but everything else, basically. We're known primarily for pharmacy and health sciences and business. And we're also a liberal arts university, so all of the top liberal arts majors are also fantastic at St. John's. Many students have been applying to things like psychology, which we have a great program in. We have wonderful computer science, which is one of the most popular programs amongst our international students. We have a whole bachelor's degree in video game design that is pictured on the bottom of this slide. That's our video game design lab. We have state-of-the-art laboratories in biology and biochemistry. And again, top business programs. So really many, many options to choose from. Things like sports management is interesting to a lot of students, hospitality management as well. We offer many dual degree options where you can finish with a bachelor's and a master's. I like to just pause here and say, can you imagine living here? And does that look like New York City to you? Because it's not what I would be picturing of New York City. I mean, this is the beauty of St. John's. You get to live, it's optional. You can live wherever you want, but if you want, you live on campus. And as you saw earlier in the presentation, we have a beautiful 100-acre green campus in New York City. This is a dormitory building where students live behind, and the students are just playing casual basketball and relaxing, eating and studying. So we picked literally probably the worst year to talk about outcomes. Think about our class of 2021, right? In the height, I would say, of the pandemic still. And our numbers were still quite good, right? So nearly 97% of our graduates said they would recommend us. St. John students tend to be very happy after graduating and do recommend us. And 90% of our students or graduates were either hired, employed, or enrolled in another education program, a graduate level program, within 6 months of completing their degree. And again, in 2021, that number is usually a little bit higher than that, like 95%. But I think, to be able to say we kept it above 90% even in 2021 is quite amazing. I mean, we're just a leader in assisting our students to get both internships while they're studying and jobs after their studies. These are just some of the companies that we work with very closely. You see Deloitte, KPMG, PwC, and Ernst & Young are all on here, but many other, top companies as well. So, I mentioned those if you're interested in business degrees or in a career in business, but then, all top entertainment and sports, education, pharmacies, retail, and police, safety and police, the list just goes on. So we really pride ourselves in career services. There's something very nice about our application, which is that it is free of charge. And most institutions cannot say that. We also offer rolling admission, which means we don't really have deadlines. So if you just completed high school and you still are not sure what you're doing this fall, you could literally still apply to St. John's right now for the fall of this year to begin in New York in, late August. It is a little bit late, to be honest, especially for international students, especially for those who would need a visa to deal with the application process and the visa process at this point. It would be a little late, but it's possible. We just admitted a student 2 weeks ago. He just deposited yesterday and will be joining us in the fall. So I really like to stress that about St. John's. We've made our application as simple and accessible as possible. Again, there's no fee to apply. We have early decision and early action deadlines, but no other deadlines, with the exception of 2 very specific programs that do have a February 1st deadline. They're listed here, pharmacy and biooptometry, but literally every other program. And then in terms of requirements on the application, we are test optional, which means we no longer require the SAT or ACT. That's going to be quite common at most US institutions right now. You do not need to submit SAT or ACT. But check, because it used to be that that would be a requirement everywhere. Now it's optional in some places and becoming more common that it's optional. We most likely will require an English proficiency exam. There are some exceptions. If you're a US citizen, we can make an exception if you speak English at home as a first language. If you've attended an English only speaking private school in Spain for the full 4 years of high school, we can waive the English requirement for those students as well. But we need your transcripts, and if they're not in English, we need them translated into English officially by an official translation service. And that's pretty much it. So while we call these materials at the end optional, I highly recommend that you do submit the personal essay and letter of recommendation. Those are optional, but much better if you submit them. Whereas the SAT is truly optional. Like, it is completely fine to not submit SAT. I'm almost done with my presentation, so please don't leave, and hold your questions or write them in the chat, and we're going to get to all those questions really soon. What I want to say here is don't be scared, or that's the wrong word. Don't stop at the tuition that is advertised. As I mentioned earlier, there's so many ways to drastically lower the cost of attending institutions in the United States. You see here that our annual tuition is just under $50,000, and our annual cost of room and board is just under $20,000. Add on the mandatory insurance, and we're rounding up those numbers, and we're getting pretty close to $70,000 per year. I would say that's about average, maybe even on the low end for private institutions in the United States for the full cost when you consider tuition and room and board. But do not stop here. Again, by submitting a free application to St. John's University, in fact, I'm getting off this slide because it's just going to make you not come to me. This is the important slide. And I'm like laughing, but I'm not joking. The merit scholarship, the first one mentioned here, this is automatic with your application to St. John's University. And I can tell you for a fact that over the last 2 years, I've not admitted a single student from Europe or from the Middle East or North Africa for that matter. I have not admitted a single student who has not received at least $10,000 in merit scholarship. So 95 to 99% of admitted students are receiving at least $10,000 off our annual tuition, up to about $32,000 off our annual tuition. So that's about 2/3 of the tuition. Remember, the tuition cost was $48,500. So with the merit scholarship, and that's based on your high school performance, your high school grades, you can easily get up to $20,000, $25,000, $30,000 per year in scholarship. Again, it's automatic with your free application. So you don't know what St. John's University is going to cost you until you apply and have been admitted, should you be admitted. It's important also to understand that we have several other scholarships that you can apply for. The main ones are the first of the two that are bulleted in red with the January 15th deadline. So let's just look at the Ozanam Scholars Program because it's a larger scholarship. This is an additional application. You need to apply to St. John's University and fill out an application for Ozanam Scholars or Catholic Scholars. It's a program. It's outside of your studies. Should you be admitted to this program, you would be meeting with this group of students on a regular basis. And for Ozanam, you'd be planning community service. It's a group of students who give back to the community. It's a great program. It's extremely competitive because it comes with $10,000 a year in scholarship. But if you get into this program, you can combine that $10,000 with your merit scholarship. And then all of a sudden, it becomes possible to get up to nearly full tuition scholarship, where students are paying a very small fraction of our advertised tuition, and then just paying for room and board. So that's my presentation for today. If you want to be added to our mailing list and you've engaged with us at an early time, which does look good on an application. And then my email as well. Oh, you know what? Oh, great. Sarah, thank you. I sent it to only the host and she sent it to all. Thank you, Sarah. I appreciate that. And then here's my email again, sloan@stjohns.edu. Again, my name is Sean Sloan, so the email is just Sloan and then my first initial, sloans@stjohns.edu.